Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to this talk this evening, titled I Was Determined to Stay, Suzanne Santoro, Art and 1970s Feminism in Rome. And it is a great honor to introduce you to Suzanne Santoro and BSR alumna Dr. Alessia Zinnari. Suzanne Santoro was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1946. She spent her childhood there attending museum and art classes. She studied as a scholarship student at the Brooklyn Museum and at the School of Visual Arts in New York, where she graduated in fine arts and where she was influenced by the painting and sculpture of the 1950s and 1960s, as well as the minimalism and conceptual art. Through Dor Ashton, Santoro met Mark Rothko, with whom in the late 1960s she traveled across Europe and came to Italy for the first time. In Rome, she began her studies of ancient and classical art, focusing on female statuary in ancient Roman sculpture. After settling permanently in Rome, she joined the Rivolta Femminile group, together with Carla Lonzi and Carla Riccardi. In 1974, she published the artist book Towards New Expression, which explores female form and beauty, as expressed in drapery, classical statuary, and photography. In 1975, Santoro, along with other Italian women artists, founded Cooperativa Beato Angelico as the first women's art space in Rome, the first to exhibit the long-forgotten painting La Aurora by Artemisia Gentileschi. In the following years, Suzanne Santoro exhibited her works worldwide, giving lectures and publishing articles. She then began her studies as an art therapist, and in 1984 graduated from Istituto Ortofonologia in Rome, specializing in the treatment of early childhood patients. Since 1985, she's been responsible for painting and graphic work at the Institute's atelier, working primarily with children affected by deafness. She considers her work to be strongly influenced by the primordial structures revealed in the graphic process of the early childhood. Her works have become part of public and private collections, including the National Museum of Women's Arts in Washington, D.C., and MAMCO in Geneva. In 2016, the Bourbon Collection in Vienna acquired her work for its permanent collection of 1970s feminist avant-garde. She has donated part of her personal archive, including documents from the Cooperativa Beato Angelico, to Archivia at the Casa. Thank you. Susan has been actively collaborating for 15 years with the Anti-Violence Center Arena in Viterbo. She currently draws, paints, exhibits, and gives lectures. Alessia Zinnari is a lecturer in Italian at the University of Glasgow. Her research focuses on women's narratives and gender-based trauma through a comparative and interdisciplinary lens, and on the relationship between creativity, activism, and self-determination. In 2022, she spent the year researching in Italy, first at the British School at Rome as a Rome awardee, working on Santoro's feminist legacy, and then in Venice as a Benno Geiger Fellow at the Fondazione Cini, working on Sibilla Alaramo. She has published extensively on 20th century women's writing and art, and is currently working on her first monograph, Modern Phoenixes, Mental Illness, Liminality, and Autobiography in Leonora Carrington and Alda Marini, which will be published with Routledge. Alessia has a particular interest in working together with artists using feminist, relational, and interdisciplinary methodologies to address questions around power and resistance, and has recently completed the first iteration of her AHRC-funded project, Camera, which engages marginalized communities in the Glasgow area through photography and autobiographical writing. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And thank you to the BSR for hosting this to me, to us, very special event, very special evening with Suzanne. Thank you, Marta Pellegrini and Abigail Brundin for this very special experience. And being back is great. And thank you everyone for being here. What I wanted to do, as Eloise was saying, I was here in 2022, and the beauty of working at the BSR is coming to Rome and see your research come to life. Because you have the opportunity to encounter the materials, the objects, or the people that you are researching on. And when I came here, I realized through Giovanna de Casa delle Donne that it was possible to not only access Suzanne's archive that she kindly donated to the Casa Internazionale, but also access Suzanne through her phone number that was given to me. And that's how I went and visited her in Capranica. And she welcomed me, and I didn't know what to expect. I thought I was going to do a formal interview that I would go to record. And we spent the day together cooking. And I brought some wines and drinking some of that, and talking. And again, when I thought about this research, I thought about embedding some of these feminist methodologies in my work. And part of this research is the idea of dialogical relationships, so dialogue and relations, so relational approaches, which is the reason why I actually haven't managed to publish anything yet. Because there's been a lot of talking, a lot of friendship, a lot of thinking through things, which kind of defies traditional forms of research and outcomes, outputs, and so on. So we'll get there. But tonight, what I wanted to do was to bring some of this to you, some of this privilege to listen to Suzanne speaking through her what I think is incredibly, and what I'm sure you agree, because otherwise you wouldn't be here, very important work. So now we're going to have a conversation about your work and your experience of the work and your experience of Rome, because Rome is a focus of my research as well. So we heard something about your biography, and we heard that you visited Rome through Mark Rothko's family. And so I want to ask you, can we start talking about your memories, your first memories of Rome? And you visited the city, and how did the city welcome you? And how did the city change between when you visited at the end of the 60s and then when you returned at the start of the 70s? I think it's on already.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay, I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City, and my art history professor was Dory Ashton, who was a famous art critic of abstract expressionism, and she, of course, knew Rothko, and she nominated me to go and see him as they were coming to Europe. The family Rothko was coming to Europe for the Marlborough Galleries in London, Rome, and in Paris. I was taking care of children. I was 20 years old. Anyway, we got here and we lived in Carla Panicali's amazing home in the ghetto. I mean, it was just flabbergasting. And they wouldn't let me go out. I couldn't see Rome, so, which was pretty crazy for an art student. So yeah, it was amazing. It was just beautiful in this top fancy home of 13 rooms, salons, not rooms, where we stayed in the ghetto. And I saw nothing. Anyway, when I came back, when I finished art school, I said, well, I've got to go back there and see stuff. And so I did. And I was alone for about a year because I just wanted to see the museums. I spent all my time at Palazzo Massimo, you know, all the Roman stuff and Roman statues and everything that's in Circa. It's one of my favorite museums even today. But I was alone for about a year and I was ready to go back to America, back to New York. And I met Carla Lonzi, and that was the beginning of my change of life, total change of life. I think have to go on. If I start, I won't finish.
Yes, yeah,
Uh,
we could talk about this for
about it
many,
later,
many hours.
because I know a lot about Carla Lonzi. I spent a lot of time with her, intimate time, you know, not just the Rivolta Femminile and Autocoscienza. There was a lot of friendly times together, social times with her and Carla Cardi. So I have quite a bit of knowledge and
Yes,
reminiscing, and yeah, it changed my life. Yeah.
yeah.
Life-changing, absolutely life-changing. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So that was going to be my next question. I think we can also go to the next slide, is about your relationship with Rivolta Femminile and how that influenced your work.
Okay, this is a picture that was sent to me by the Consagra archive. And that's me on the right, that's Carla Lonzi towards the left, and Carla Cardi and Marta Lonzi, the sister of Carla Lonzi. And that was actually Consagra's studio in the Cassia. This doesn't exist anymore because they've constructed everything you can imagine. I guess we can go on to some of the works, right? Okay. Can you do that? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so while I was at Rivolta Femminile and having this very strong relationship with Carla Lonzi, I started making works about things that we were talking about, and she herself shaved herself to be able to see the labia. This is all very difficult to talk about because I've been censored, I've been accused of everything in the world. And actually, I was looking at Roman sculpture for a year by myself. And well, we have to go on to the next. Anyway, this is 1971. I've just started being in Rivolta Femminile. And then I published this little book with Rivolta Femminile in Rome. At that point, Carla Cardi and Carla Lonzi were breaking up, and it was quite a mess because Carla Lonzi was saying, tabula rasa, and we should all start doing whatever professionally anybody should do, and we should start from zero, which I think is a very important concept, by the way. So maybe we should show the pictures of the book itself. I got in lots of trouble, and this was a very, very, very work I did because it was for me. I wasn't showing, I wasn't an artist, you know, who had exhibitions or anything like that. I just did this for myself because I wanted to see what I looked like anatomically, which Carla Lonzi did not like this idea because she thought, justly so, I've been thinking about this for 50 years, that this is our secret, this is our stuff, and we shouldn't allow it to be appropriated by just anybody. And she was also out of the art world at that point, so she did not like art at that moment. This changed over time, but so she didn't like this book. Anyway, here you see the front page, which shows the vulva. And then I take things from the Renaissance, like this is Cranach, for example, where the vulva is absolutely canceled, which it hadn't been for thousands of years in cave art and for thousands of years. And the Renaissance did a good job on finishing that. And we can go on. Yeah, and same thing. I think this is Da Vinci. And he was a great anatomist, we say. And he just doesn't give you any advice of how women are made, which was my problem. I didn't know either. That was Cranach, which is pretty bad too. Just us, you know, cut. And just by kind of coincidence, I started photographing myself and somebody else who had agreed to do this. And at the same time, I was looking at all this Roman sculpture. And it just, this thing about folds and everything, which is nothing new, by the way. This has been mentioned in the story of, you know, it's not new. And this statue, Polymnia, one of the muses, really got me. So these things I put together just coincidentally, and was very criticized for this because at that time, I think there was still this problem with Roman culture, you know, and I was looking at all this Roman stuff, and we were still in a very political situation. The war was still with us. The Second World War was. So this whole idea of Roman sculpture, my God, you don't go near that stuff. It's fascist or whatever. So I got a lot of criticism, just how dare I use Roman sculpture. Well, I was fascinated by it because I was this dumb art student from New York City, born in Brooklyn. Anyway, I think we can go on. Well, I don't know if I would do this today because I suffered on about this book a great deal. I was very criticized and censored and considered either oversexed or whatever. This, I also worked on this series that called it in the 70s, Black Mirrors, and I was taking photographs with an old camera, and it made these very fuzzy, dark photographs, and I printed them very, very dark. And then I wanted to do mirrors because I had been to Doria Pamphili and other great palaces in Rome where you have these floor to ceiling mirrors that are very dark, and they kind of really fascinated me. So I wanted to do black mirrors. I don't know. But all this gets into this whole Carla Lonzi thing because Carla Lonzi was always talking about women in the shadow, that we are nothing else but in the shadow. I didn't realize it was very kind of instinctive, excuse my word, instinctive. I mean, people don't like that word anymore, but so I put I would glue these dark photographs that I would print and glue them onto wooden panels and then use polyester resin, and then I would sand them down. It's a lot of work. And then I would polish them. And I did a long series of these in the 70s. Very dangerous stuff, polyester resin. And I did this family, I call it, and it's my ex-husband's family. And it was Christmas, you know, the midnight Christmas dinner. And the man who owns this picture has it in his lunchroom, and he loves it. And he doesn't know that it's like a macabre family scene of a dark, ugly patriarchal with the man in the back, the patriarch. It was a very, very patriarchal family. Very old fashioned, coming out of the Second World War, very anti-communist, very Christian Democrat, and really bad problems with these people I had. Anyway, and my mother had just died, so I was really in a this is a very depressing piece of work. Anyway, I guess we can go.
I think I find it interesting because you were, through your personal experience again, you were reflecting on how dangerous and violent some of these dynamics, of patriarchal dynamics can be, of like being forced to follow a traditional kind of pathway in your life, and you felt maybe trapped or.
Well, no, I was considered a total nut because I was an artist, I was a foreigner, and I was living on my own. They just couldn't understand this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of trouble. The mother wouldn't talk to me. She would talk to the cameriere, the maid, and she would tell Suzanne to do this or not to do that or whatever. And that went on. She never talked to me again. So it was, yeah, a really pleasant experience being married to a
Yes. And we were
traditional
yeah, and we were talking about
Second World War.
we were talking about yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about the fact that it's divided in parts because you couldn't do it all by yourself. It's
Well,
quite
I did
big.
everything by myself. You know, if I had a factory with a big thing that polishes, you know, so I had to do it in pieces because I was doing it on my own. So I had to be able to manage it by myself.
Yes, but in a way, it kind of adds to this idea of like fragmentary.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. I have no problems with fragmentation.
Yes, and so yeah, we're talking about the period of the end of the experience with Rivolta Femminile, and maybe we can talk a bit about the rupture and the breakage that there was in the group very briefly, because of course that's a long story. But what I wanted to ask you about was your experience of, let's say, transitioning between the more active impegno with Rivolta Femminile to the Cooperativa del Beato Angelico, which was women-run gallery space,
Yes.
one of the first in Europe. Can you tell us how that
Okay,
period worked?
As the breakup between Carla Cardi and Carla Lonzi happened, I think the first gesture that Carla Cardi made was to do the Cooperativa with other women artists. That was really, you know, different than what Carla, they were already separated. And then after that, Carla Lonzi just left feminism and painted for the rest of her life. Yeah, it was very emotional, this whole breakup of Rivolta Femminile. Yeah.
Yes, and do we
If
want
I
to...
start talking about it, I won't finish.
Well,
I
I
won't
mean,
say too
you can say something about maybe what it was like for you, the idea to continue making art after Carla Lonzi instead made the decision to withdraw herself from that world.
It's a funny question because there were other artists in Rivolta Femminile. There was Anna Maria Colucci. Now that I think of it, I can't remember somebody. And we just continued making things. Because once, I mean, as this, especially Carla Lonzi's feminism, which was so different than Anglo-Saxon feminism or political feminism, but it opened the field to so many different things you could study. So it was there was no bottom to what you could study once you stopped following what the guys were doing, you know, the historical, you'd go into all the whole female culture, which is going on for the last, I don't know, since whenever, since the beginning of time. Where am I?
So yeah, how maybe do we want to explain a bit more what it was like to be part of the cooperativa, which was very
It's
different.
interesting because we were not all feminists, by the way. Stephanie Ausler was with us, and but we can talk about her in a minute, right? Not right now.
Yeah, maybe more in general about what the cooperativa wanted to do, how you were working together.
It's just that also happened practically by coincidence. We were all at a party. We were invited to a party at Eva Mencio's house at Piazza di Spagna. And we were talking, I remember, this is what I remember, Carla Lonzi, myself, and Eva. And we said, well, why don't we do something? Because Eva Mencio was very in contact with archives of art historians and so on and so forth. So she said, why don't we do Artemisia? Because she knew who the collector was of that painting. I think we have to go to it. You have to jump a bit. Yeah. This was a very, very big painting. Artemisia was unknown in those years. I mean, practically unknown. And there were no big exhibitions. We were the first, I think, to show her. Yeah. And it was all Eva Mencio's because she went into Briganti's archive and she got all the letters, and we published a wonderful newspaper with all Artemisia's letters. And so what we did was that we did contemporary artists, and we alternated with other historical artists, female artists. One was, oh God, I'm having a blank. The one
Regina.
Bologna. What's her name? I've just got a block.
It's okay.
What's her name?
Was it Alette?
No, all right. We did one with a Regina, who was a second futurist, and the one from Bologna died. Laura, come si La Sirani, scusa, no, perché. So yeah, it only lasted about a year and a half, and it was an interesting experience because we were really the first to show, I think, important women artists, and that was because of Eva Mencio, who did all that work. Okay.
And I think it was important that, again, like in Towards New Expression, you are connecting the past and the present in order to process the present. And the same, the cooperativa, you were thinking about your work, you were showing your work as the artists, but you were also going back in history of art by showing work that had been forgotten or not valued.
Not interesting.
Yeah, and that's very powerful.
Most people.
Yes, and do you want to tell us a bit more? Because again, I have this focus on Rome, about the location of the cooperativa.
The cooperativa, well, it was called the Cooperativa di Via Beato Angelico because it was the exit of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, the one at the where the elephant is, the Bernini elephant with the raised trunk, right near the Pantheon. And as you exit the Santa Maria sopra Minerva, there's the tomb of Beato Angelico, you know, on the ground, the stone tomb of his. So that's what we called it because it was right in that little street, tiny little street.
And you said that you were storing the painting in the...
Yeah, the church. I mean, we all contributed to the rent of this place, and we kind of fixed it up and so on. And we all went there and took care of things and so on and so forth. And I saved everything, the archives of the whole thing. And I gave it to the Casa Internazionale. All the things from the 70s are there that you can see.
And so
anytime.
you were storing the Artemisia painting?
Yeah, the church, the priest would take the painting. We had no insurance or anything like that. The priest at Santa Maria would take the painting overnight. And
Only in Rome.
things were much easier those days. Life has gotten really complicated right now, and it's practically
Yeah.
impossible. I mean, we had no telefonini, we had no computers. So when we met on Wednesdays, I remember at Carla Cardi's apartment, Via del Babuino, with Carla Lonzi was in Rome because Sandra was here, her mate was here. So she spent lots of times in Rome. She loved Rome.
Yes, yes. And I am interested in, again, another person, artist of that period, which is Stephanie Ausler.
Okay.
You were both American, so I'm interested in your experience of coming to Rome as non-Roman, non-Italian women.
Okay, this is a good, nice question. It's interesting. I had never thought of this myself. Yeah, I guess we were considered foreigners, but the truth is we are not, because the people in the United States on the East Coast, you know, it's from New York. I lived on a street in Brooklyn where we were first generation of immigrants. My mother was English and had to leave England because of the crash 29. She had a grandmother in New York and she went there. That's another story. And on my street in Brooklyn, there were Portuguese, Arabs, lots of Mideastern, Italians, Greeks. And in those homes, I ate Greek food and heard everybody speaking their original language, you know, Arab or Greek or Italian or Portuguese, etc. So, you know,
So
I have European parents, and I grew up with all European first generation. So
you didn't
it's not
feel like,
that far away from Europe.
yeah, you didn't feel like you had landed in an alien world where.
No, I was treated a little bit like an alien world, as an alien, because that time there was this communist extra parliamentary groups and everything, and they didn't want me around because I was American. I guess what stupid me would be a spy or something. And yeah, and what nerve I had to use Roman statuary. I guess they were still having problems with fascism. I was just a kid. I didn't have that heritage of the war, which they did very much still in the 70s. The war was very present, and I lived near Via Rasella and Via del Boccaccio, where that horrible, what's it called, reprisal happened, and my husband's family was involved in that whole thing, and blah, blah, blah. So it was all very present, this fascist, there's still this political thing, and I was, you know, doing something I shouldn't be looking at Roman statuary, so I was criticized, yeah, lots of criticism, lots of censorship, yeah. I was always sex. Yeah, I didn't know anything about sex. That's why I wanted to see a picture of what I looked like. I didn't know anything. That's why Rivolta Femminile was so important. It's very important to read her books. We Spit on Hegel, which is translated, and also the clitoral and the vaginal woman. Very important for a woman to read. Men too, I guess, but yeah, very important. And also the group, we were not political. It was just based on autoconsciences, as it's called, consciousness raising in English. It was just about us. We tabula rasa, we had to start from ourselves and getting rid of everything else. So we did not go on protests. We did not speak in public. We didn't even speak with other feminists. It was our private little thing, and then it changed when the group broke up, when Rivolta Femminile broke up in Rome. Then I started involved with the Casa Internazionale and Clotilde Ricciardi, who was a great friend, and Stephanie I met. And Stephanie has the same kind of situation. Her parents were both from Europe too. Her mother died in the resistance. She went to England and worked for the resistance and was killed there. Her father was a union leader in America. I don't know anything. I can't remember much more that she told. So we were both quite unusual Americans, just not the ugly American. But on the East Coast, that's what it's like. It's all people from East and immigrants from the Middle East and Europe, Mediterranean.
Yeah,
very easy. I mean,
yes, very diverse.
You can hear Italian on the streets. Yeah, Italy. Yeah, I have New York.
And you also, I mean, you had also connections with Italy through your heritage, so you already knew
No,
bit.
not much, because my father died when I was very, very young. So, but I
mm.
guess the connection is there anyway, somehow. Yeah.
Yes, and so just because you mentioned this idea of like separatism and keeping things, not showing your things to other people, keeping it in the group, do you think this is why Carla Lonzi had that, let's say, negative reaction to your book towards New Expression, because she thought you were showing?
She said to me one day, "I hope you're not going to make these things big and show them all over the place." And I just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was very against, I guess, imagery. In fact, in her books, because of her, you know, we speak on Hegel and on the clitoral and the vaginal woman, she shows no pictures. She talks about, you know, how the orgasm, female orgasm works and everything, but there were no pictures. And I was saying, what do I look like? What do I look like? What does this thing look like? So that's why I did it. But her idea is that we had to keep things for ourselves so they wouldn't be appropriated by other people. I mean, Italian feminism of the difference has these different ideas about feminism they had.
Yeah. Yeah, we maybe for now we can move on from the 70s, and
let's
then
go.
we'll go back if people have questions. Let's do that. So I want to maybe hear more about what happened after, you know, the 70s were over. There's the so-called period of the reflux. There is not that much activity going on. What did you do at that point? Did you feel a bit lost?
It's very depressed, obviously, because I thought, no, I did get involved with, you know, the Casa Internazionale in Clotti, and Stephanie was doing a lot of wonderful work. She did this wonderful book, A Year of Violence, all about feminicide, you know, and Paesi Sera. Now, we didn't use the word, it existed, the word feminized, but we're talking about 1976, and she has a whole book. It was called The Album of Violence, and it was Year of Violence. And every page was a picture of this woman done by Paesi Sera, which is a newspaper that doesn't exist anymore. And the whole story of this woman every day. And she published this wonderful book, you know, in 1976, when the word feminicide really wasn't used as like it is today.
And that's at that point that you, towards the 80s, that you trained as an art therapist, right? And I'll go to the next image.
Yeah, after time of teaching English, which I hated, because then in the meantime I got separated after 20-year relationship. But anyway, so I had to find something to do, kind of, because I hadn't, you know, support myself. And so I decided to become an art therapist, which I did. And I worked with very small children in developmental therapy, let's say children practically just born up until 4 or 5 years old, which is when children draw and paint, and it's a very cognitive experience. People think it's a big fun thing, and it's just a fun thing. It isn't a fun thing. It's a cognitive process, a learning process, and so on. I don't want to get into it because I could talk about this until tomorrow. But the most interesting thing was that the KIP I worked with, and this psychoanalyst that was my head, you know, the head person there, she said, you should paint with the children. So all my work in those years of painting happened because I could paint and draw with the children. And I learned a lot from the children about drawing, because there's spontaneity. It's almost instinctive. We're not supposed to use that word, but the minute a child holds a tool in his hand or her hand, they will make a mark. And they already know the grammar of graphics, which is, you know, line, mass, and chiaroscuro. Because if your hand is gesturing strongly, you will make a dark line. And if you go lightly, you will make a light line. And if you make a mass, you do the same thing, you know, you scribble. So they have, it's a language. Art is a language. People don't know that. They think it's you're just born with it or you're just crazy. So I don't like the word artist because it keeps me away from people. I mean, I'm involved in an anti-violence center for the last 20 years in Viterbo, and I never tell people I'm an artist. And because they know nothing about art, because you're either so special or you're totally nuts, because they don't understand what's going on. Someone said, I talked about the idea of spatial, that the only art form that is spatial is figurative art. I said, what does that mean? So it's a language that doesn't have to do with anything else. It's just, it's an altered, atemporal, altered state, which no other expression has. Everything starts and ends. I bring people, you know, say, oh, these anthropologist friends, and they want to see some paintings. So I bring them to see a Caravaggio. And they look and I tell them, well, just look at a color you like, or paint, you know, a brush paint, I don't know, something, whatever, you can choose. And they just couldn't get it. And that you can look at a painting anywhere. It's a spatial global experience, and they just couldn't get it. And when we left the church, they said to me, we're really disappointed. And I said, why? I mean, they're anthropologists. I mean, they worked in Africa. They should know that, you know, these kinds of different things exist. And they just, you know, said, well, we didn't understand what you were talking about. And I said, well,
Because it was too free, the idea of like, you can start and end whatever you want. It's
to describe, just had another theater person in my group, my anti-violence group. And she was very talkative and asking me lots of questions, because people are afraid to ask artists things. That's why I don't say I'm an artist, because they don't know what to say, because they don't know anything about art. So you don't talk about art and blah, blah, blah. But she happened to be very talkative and a theater person. And she said, what is this thing? You know, what is this? And I said, well, it's a spatial thing. She says, what do you mean? So I hope everybody gets the idea of a spatial language, which has nothing to do with continual rational thought thinking. I mean, do you get it? I mean, do you guys get it? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm happy about
I heard
that.
yes.
I mean, I was surprised that I would have to explain such a simple, rudimentary thing that children can do without explaining it to them.
I mean,
They do it. They
it's
just
true
do
though.
it.
We're not image literate that much. We are more used to work with text, which is
Yeah.
why it's so interesting what you were saying about Lonzi refusing art and instead leaning on the written word as a form that for her was more liberating, but actually in a way is still part of a system, while in a way this is not that much because it's more free.
Well, I think, yeah, she did think that writing was more important than painting, but she was right, because that is the instrument that is most
Effective.
understood, effective in this world. The world of images that have been around for like 80,000 years has lost its place. And the world has gotten so confused, and art is very hard to understand, of course, because
Yeah.
we live in such a stupid, crazy world, and artists reflect the world they live in. That's all they do.
And probably as well for the,
And it's hard for anybody to understand that. It's hard for the artist to understand where we are, where he is, where she is. Yeah, at that moment, Carla Lonzi was cut off from that world, because I think she felt that she was too much of a servant to that world, and she wanted to find something of her own. And she was a writer. She was a philosopher, a writer, and that's what she did best. And that's why she had to stop writing about artists, because she had to find something about herself. And that's what that was about. But I know later in her life, I know a lot of things about Carla Lonzi. Recently, Archibugi, the director, the film director, is doing a film. She was asked by Fandango to do a film on Carla Lonzi. And she told me a lot, because she's married to Carla Lonzi's son. And they have a lot of children together. It's a very solid relationship, and they work together. And he's I think he's a musician too, so he works on cinema and music and sound and all that. And Archibugi told me that they knew each other, the son of Carla Lonzi, from when they were young, and then they got together again later on somehow. I don't know the details. This is just what she told me, because she came to visit me where I do my work. I don't call it a studio, because I don't like the word studio, as I don't like the word artist. I mean, okay. And the whole troupe came, and she talked to me about Carla Lonzi, because she was very intimate with Carla Lonzi in the last years of her life. Well, she was very ill, and she said, you know, Carla Lonzi had come back to herself and calmed down, and was much more favorable, everything around her. She had become less angry. She was very, very angry in her diary. It's very hard to read, because it's difficult stuff.
But sorry, Suzanne, I'm interrupting you just
Okay,
because
that.
to me this is more about you. So do you want to say a couple words of this on this painting, and then we'll move on?
Yeah, okay. This painting I definitely did while I was working with children, and for me, it's just an attack on beauty. That the crocodile is just attacking beauty. We can go on, so because I
know, but I
thought
thought the crocodile was great, but that's fine. We'll go on.
yeah, it's just paper on paper. Maybe it's written. Something is written. Anyway, it's 70 by 50. And then I started looking at history in every form and shape, the medieval, any place. I mean, prehistory everywhere. This is a strange thing that I found, because I spend a lot of time looking at pictures and less time reading as I get older. And I got a lot of inspiration from just looking at pictures from the past, at art instead of. And this is a thing that it's in Milan. It was done, what is it, 13? Well, this is like 12th century. And it was on one of the porti of Milan. And now it's in a museum. It doesn't matter. And this fellow, this aristocrat or leader, some kind of political person, was angry with his wife. And this is the thing he had made in honor of her. She's cutting off her vulva. But the strange thing is that down below, because artists are always doing things hidden in sight, like Caravaggio and lots of other artists, and down there is a representation of a female organ. Okay, so that's what interests me. So I take things from the past, I just kind of copy them and let you see if that means anything to us today. Okay.
So, but did you say that he forced her to shape?
No, this was how he represented her. This was in honor of his wife, who was a traitor or something, but it was something to do with politics. It didn't have to do with sex or jealousy or anything like that. It was about, he was a political person and she did something. I don't know what it is. It's not important. But this is what he dedicated to her.
Yeah, I love that you're still able to spot.
It's terrible. I mean,
yes,
it's really horrible. And this is interesting too, because this was very easy to find, but it's really interesting because this is also from the 13th century. And I just copied the thing. I don't always give you the thing I copied from because sometimes I lose it or it's not important, whatever. And I don't have to show you everything. I mean, this is, okay, so this is a, what do we call, a midwife, yeah, a midwife. And she's mixing her brew, but she's also got a magic wand. So we're talking about the first medieval where women were very important and did a lot of things. And she's going to perform an abortion on this woman who's holding her stomach, and it's called pennyroyal, which is considered even today, an abortifacient. And I'm just bringing that to you.
And is it part of your own research as well with the Anti-Violence Center that you've been looking at, researching?
Yeah. The president of the Anti-Violence Center is a classicist and a literary scholar, and she brings us, lots of stuff. We do lots of stuff. And I don't know, we studied the, basically Maria Gambutis, we studied, it took us years to finish that, the language of the goddess, where she studies all the vases and clay and all the symbols. And she says, there's a pre-language here and there's a female religion here. And she also had a theory of how the patriarchy started about 15,000 years ago. People who she called the Krogans, who came down from the north on horses in the Mediterranean. There were no horses. And this frightened the people and they kind of took over. And it seems that these men, they were all men coming down. They had broken away from these female tribes or matrilineal tribes, but we don't know. This is just, hypothesis and stuff. Yeah, and she's known for someone who has put old Europe on the map. So this is just another picture I pulled out of, first medieval, I don't know when that's from. But it's interesting because these are two obviously powerful women. One has a building in her hand, so she's, well, she may be a queen or a princess or whatever, but she still has lots of power. And the other one seems to have a big knife in her hand. So, I don't know. You tell me. Anyway, getting back to the Maria Gambutis, who works so much on vases, from the Neolithic all over the Mediterranean. And she was finding that there was a language there. And also she studied all the symbols, the egg and the bird and all these female symbols. And she also said in her digs in the Mediterranean, she never found weapons in tombs. Evidently, it was her idea was that it was an egalitarian society, a not warring society. That seems to be our origins in the Mediterranean. So I worked a lot on the idea of the chalice, the vase, which I think women invented. I think women practically invented everything. That's how I keep myself sane. And then I worked a lot on these vases and things, and then I just exploded one with an octopus, but don't tell me why. But I did hundreds of these things, so I'm trying to be very synthetic here because I'm talking about 55 years of work. So I had to be really synthetic. I have to be really synthetic. And then I think the next slide.
Yes, and actually, talking about synthesis, we're coming to the final.
Okay, this is the
work.
last series I've done that will be shown at Macro that won't open until December. And
Where is it? Did you say?
Macro is doing a big show in Macro's a museum, you know,
In December?
modern, contemporary.
Okay.
In December. It was supposed to already open, but anyway, it's delayed until December or something. Anyway, well, I did hundreds of these things, and it was all about Medea, the sorceress, you know, the great pharmacon, you know, Medea's medicine. And I don't want to say too much, but I think Medea is really important. I don't know if anybody's seen, you probably have, some of you, Pasolini's Medea with Callas, you know, Medea Callas. It's really a beautiful, beautiful film where you can see the power of this woman to create, I don't want to use the word kill, but create and what's another better word than kill? The power over life and death, to give life and to take life, which is denied to women these days.
Yeah, I liked it. I like the nails.
Oh yeah, I did a lot with nails because I see all these women with nails and pins and heels. And look like they're ready for war.
Mhm. And the serpent is also powerful.
I don't know if they know that they're walking around with all these weapons. And even just a long pin is an incredible weapon, which women, you know, are known for wearing pins in their hats and pins.
And what about the snake?
What about what? Oh yeah, well that's the poison from snake. And the purple, the burning purple. All poisons are purple because they're nightshade, I think, plants, and when you boil them down, they're all purple. So their fingers are purple, and purple is an important color symbol for the feminist movement. It's always been red and purple, which the church took over. You know, purple and red in their vestments.
Right.
Is really a female symbolic colors.
Well, I have a very
Because it has to do with poison.
very
plant
final
poison.
question for you. Sorry, I'll let you go after. It's about the very deserved revival that you're having in the last years, which included your collaboration with Dior recently. Do you want to just briefly talk about what that was like?
Yeah,
for
I was
you?
very surprised when Maria Grazia Chiuri came to me. She's a stylist. Well, now she's gone to Fendi, but she was with Dior for years. She's also a big collector and a feminist herself and collects a lot of women artists. She came to me and I thought maybe she'd just have me do the backdrops because that's what a lot of the artists did, the backdrops to the fashion shows. And she said, no, we're going to do a fashion show in the Brooklyn Museum and we want you to do an exhibition. So I fell on the floor. I said, oh, really? Okay. So I did that. That was last year. And then I found out through the site, because they send you notices, real collectors register with the site the works that they bought. So you get kind of a small, tiny commission from this, and they protect their works by having it registered with the site. So recently I got this notice from the site, and I found out what she had bought, exactly what she had bought and how much she paid for it. And she had bought 8 of my black mirrors in 2019. So she knew about me before.
Yeah.
So she just came and said, okay, this is what we want to do.
And how does it feel this now that your work is getting this more international attention? Is it something that does it feel like late? Does it feel exciting?
I wasn't waiting for it because I've always worked in isolation. In fact, I was criticized by doing Dior. Someone sent me a funny email. or something on some social something. And she said, she was a woman, and she said, I respected your work before because you were doing something really authentic and real and feminist. And now that you've done this thing with Dior, you've become kind of soiled. And I said, yeah, okay. You know, I mean, you need a computer today, you need lots of money to live. I got paid to do this. Was I supposed to wait until my,
Yeah.
in my tomb that I was going to get something, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit of a problem. I went to my president of the anti-violence center because they're also very feminist, you know, because the Istanbul Convention is very strict. I mean, the anti-violence centers have a feminist statute. So I went to her and I said, well, ask her, she'll know what to do. I said, do you think I should get money for my work? And she said, go for it right away. Because also we have no money. Anti-violence centers have no money. It's a disaster. It's a total disaster. Nobody asks anti-violence centers how you treat this problem, what you do with this problem. They just say, well, let's give them more jail time or something. But, you know, it's a lot more complicated than that, working with women who have had problems
Yeah. Well,
at home.
on,
Yeah.
yeah. On this note, I agree that you should take and celebrate your success and take everything you can.
It's hard. Yeah.
And that's why we're here as well today, to celebrate your amazing work. So on this note, we can close our conversation and open to questions. But yes, thank you very much for sharing so much with us.
You have, yeah, okay.
I have so many questions.
Me too.
But I'd like to start with the question of, I'm working right now on how women in the 70s were looking at women of the past, re-examining them, reinventing them. And so I've been looking at, of course, Beata Angelico's first show of Artemisia Gentileschi. This, you know, this is a broad question, and it seems like it goes so far. And what I'm interested to know is how, is there any way at all that there's communication between what's going on in, you know, the groups of 1970s and the groups in New York and elsewhere, and the groups in Rome? And the reason I ask that is because someone like May Stevens, who made this beautiful, you know, picture. Yeah. So this is exactly the kind of detail that I'd like to know, because, for example, in May Stevens' portrait of Artemisia Gentileschi for the Sister Chapel, she's quoting this drawing by Pierre Dumontier, which is in the British Museum. She has her hand, you know, the hand of Artemisia Gentileschi, which he drew in 1625. And it's there in the middle of the May Stevens portrait. And I thought, this cannot be coincidence that May Stevens is quoting the hand of Artemisia Gentileschi. On the back of that drawing,
Yeah.
there's a dedication to her as a kind of new aurora. The drawing, the painting that...
No, the May Stevens.
Yeah, 1978. Yeah, so she made that, and I was just so curious about where, because she didn't travel. So where would she have seen that, if she would have seen that drawing of Artemisia's hand, which is, you know, in the British Museum, but you would have had to examine. I don't think it was circulating. I don't think it was in major shows. But of course, there must have been some kind of maybe women's art journal or somewhere where this is discussed, because it's just too much of a coincidence that that idea of aurora, you know, this goddess who surely Artemisia Gentileschi was thinking about as her own, you know, colorist personality, which has been stated, but then also is reiterated in the coming of to the light of feminist movements. And there's definitely some transatlantic conversation going on there, which I'm really curious to...
I can only talk for myself because I did feminism here in Italy with Carla Lonzi. That was my first, that was like 1971, before 71. I knew May Stevens because she was at the School of Visual Arts. You know, I didn't know her personally, but I knew of her. I saw her, said hello to her. I didn't do feminism in New York. I did it here. I know a little bit about it, but I think I can talk from my personal experience. As a child, I always drew and painted and blah, blah. And I would go to the Brooklyn Museum all the time there, and I was always looking for women painters. It was just kind of natural. I think the moment was bursting that women were starting to look around and say, where am I? You know, where am I represented? So I don't think you needed publications. It was almost, I hate to use the word natural, but it was a natural question. You said, well, where am I? Because you're doing all these studies that you weren't doing a century ago or weren't allowed to do or whatever. And now you're doing all these things and you're saying, but yeah, where am I? Am I anywhere? So as a child, even as an adolescent, I'd go to the museums, the Brooklyn Museum, I remember. Brooklyn Museum has a wonderful collection of art. And there are some women painters there, I can't remember. But I would be looking for the women, you know. So I think it's almost natural. Nobody likes that word, but I do.
I think it was going on, certainly. It was
Yeah, I think
going
it's
on
when
a
things
lot.
happen all at once, kind of in different places. You know, there's an awakening of something. And I think that's what happened to many women at that time in the 70s.
I think we're all.
Whether you were artists
just
or
about all
whatever
being
you
in
were.
Conversations though, right? Like that happened.
It was happening all over.
Yeah. Yeah. But when Mae Stevens was doing stuff in 1978, 79, you guys were not in conversation at all about what was going on.
Somewhat, but it was very superficial because I was so involved with the Rivolta Femminile and
Right.
Carla Lonzi. And for me, it was like, you know. And the Anglo-Saxon feminism was, New American feminism was much more about equal rights and getting out in the streets. And Rivolta Femminile, it was very personalized and we didn't go out on the streets. I did that later when Rivolta Femminile broke up. But in those first years, I'd say like from 1970 to 74 or 5, before the cooperativa, which was like 76, I guess. Those years, it was all just us and autocoscienza, you know, concentrate on us, tabula rasa, get rid of everything and think
Right.
about you. She was right. She was really lungimirante. I don't know what that is in English anymore. She could really see forward. I mean, what happened with abortion and so on. I mean, you can't go and ask the authority. You can't ask the authority to give you permission. You don't have to ask permission. And that's what Carla Lonzi's objection to the abortion fight was about.
Mhm.
You just do these things.
I have another question. Can I?
I mean, you
ask
don't
my
go
other-
and ask someone.
ask my other question as well. The other question is very much more Rome focused. Can you tell us a little bit about how Regina, the futurist painter, got involved in
She was a
this?
sculptor, actually. She did sculpture,
I-
metal
yes.
sculpture.
Yeah, I'm a specialist on futurist women, so I know about Regina, but I was really curious about how she came to be part of the group because actually then
She
in the
was not part of the
scholarship,
group.
she-
She was dead already.
Oh,
We
well,
were-
not part of the group, how she was involved in being exhibited because she was exhibiting.
Because this Eva Mencio, who was from an artist family and was also married to Pistoia, was a big art dealer. She was right in the middle of all these things, so she could get her hands on anything. And it was her idea to do women from the past, because she had access to archives from famous art historians, and because she knew all those people. That was how she lived. She grew up in that world. So she picked the artists from the past.
Okay.
And did most of the work, and then we helped. But she did most of the research and the work. And she also was in contact with collectors, so she had an easy way of getting this stuff. Because I remember Regina had passed a long time before, and we had dealings with the guy who inherited all her work. So Ava worked with him. That's how we did the exhibition. It was a very nice exhibition. I couldn't show all that stuff. There's just too much. There's just too much. I know.
Thank you for this fascinating insight into
you.
your work. It was a beautiful conversation. I have two questions.
Yeah.
One is about your time in Rome, if at the time while you were involved with Rivolta and with feminism.
Remember you. You were at the dinner with Giovanna.
Yes, indeed.
No, I didn't recognize you. Right. Now
That's fine.
okay, I get it.
So I was wondering if you were also going to galleries and exhibitions, and if there were some contemporary artists or some galleries that you would go to, or if was just if you were mainly involved within feminist circles. So if you were interested in what was going on at the time in Rome. And my second question is about Edith Schloss, if you were, your relationship with Edith Schloss, the art critic and artist, because I know she had one of your works in her collection. I think it was one of the Mantle of Venus.
I don't remember.
She shows in a video. And you were also in the Italian Americans exhibition at Sala Uno.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
I don't think I understood the first question. If
When you arrived in Rome in the when you were in Rome in the 70s, were you also going to art galleries, like more?
No, I
like
just went to Rome.
contemporary
I
art
just wanted to see all the
the
the old, the
okay. So more about
Casa
the
di
past.
Livia, all these incredible things. Yeah, I was not involved in contemporary. I was very isolated. I was kind of depressed, and I was going to spend a year in Rome because I hadn't seen it, and I was going to leave. And then I met Carla Lonzi, and then I said, no, this is where I'm going to stay. No, I was not looking for exhibitions. I wasn't doing exhibitions when I first started with Rivolta Femminile. I wasn't even thinking about that. I mean, feminism was much more important than art. Yeah.
And with Edith Schloss, were you friends?
We were very
Collaborate?
friendly. Yeah. She didn't like my work, by the way. She thought it was too pedagogical.
Well,
But we were friends. We
She
were
shows
Americans,
with
and
pride in the
so it was
videos.
very easy to be with, we spent a lot of time together. Yeah. Yeah, she was very critical kind, but that's what she was a writer. So she was,
Well,
she wrote art criticism. She was,
Yeah.
that's
Also, I
just
think
who
she was
did.
from a different generation. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
She knew a lot. There was a lot to learn from her. She knew all the abstract expressionists in New York. And so there was a lot to talk about with her. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you. I think it's really interesting how you engage with the past and with the iconography of the past, and how artists reappropriate and re-elaborate ancient sources, visual, textual, material sources. I think it's also really difficult to really disentangle the historical narrative and what we want to see in some sources. So for instance, the iconography of the woman with the tower on her head and yes. So it might look like a very powerful woman, but it also looks like the Italia Turrita, which is a very widespread iconography for Italian comuni, that might be read under the lenses of control over a city, control over a woman. And I know that in the 70s in Rome, Silvia Federici was involved in the re-elaboration of Marxist theories in the light of gender studies. So I was just wondering how you, as not an artist, but a person that re-elaborates ideas and thoughts through visual and material forms, how do you negotiate the relationship with the historical source, and how do you negotiate the relationship with the historical source and with the historiographical narratives?
I don't understand. Do you, can you say that?
How do you deal with the past? How do you deal with the past? How do you engage with it? And how did you have a connection with the circle of Federici?
No. Federici, I know Federici, I've read her things, and I've listened to her a lot on I watch people in conferences. I don't read much anymore. I like to listen to people in conferences, and I've listened to a lot to her. I don't know what to say about Federici. She's very interesting, but it's very far away from the feminism of difference. She's very political, and Carla Lonzi is one of the things that she threw out. She left the Communist Party right away because there was a big Communist Party here, lots of Marxism. It's kind of fading away now, but there was a lot in the 70s, a lot of that extra parliamentary kind of stuff. So I think Federici is kind of connected to that kind of, that world of women being, yeah, it's a political statement now. What field are you in?
History of medicine.
The what?
The history of medicine.
Oh, okay.
So we can talk about abortifacients
you
over
would know
dinner.
more.
Yes.
Yeah. You would know much more than I know about that kind of thing. But, you know, I just leaf through millions of pictures. I just like to look at pictures all the time from way back. And I see if there's anything there I can grab that makes sense for us today. That's all. I like to look at pictures.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I thought that there was a question is online. Can I give it to me? I'll ask a question from like online audience and then maybe we'll go back to the in-person. There is someone, a student from Glasgow, that's one of my students, but I do work with your work with Towards New Expression, and they are asking you, they're saying, first of all, that is very inspiring, sharing your experience. And they ask you, what age did you start working on Towards New Expression? And could you share what were your thoughts towards the work? So what does it mean that you were exploring the female body through that work, only if you're comfortable to talk about it?
1970, when I met Carla Lonzi, obviously, and you read Sputiamo, you know, sul Hegel and the clitoris and vaginal woman. I mean, I don't know if people say this out, but Carla Lonzi talked about sexuality all the time. About the clitoral woman and her ideas about all this, which maybe today are surpassed. I was, you know, someone came up to me in those years and from a political group, because there were all these extra parliamentary groups in the 70s in Rome. And I was living right at Piazza Navona. So everyone was passing through our house, you know, people from Marxist collectives and all that kind of thing. And one woman came up to me and she said, how dare you people, Carla Lonzi, Rivolta Femminile, talk and make a difference between women, you know, clitoral and vaginal women. Well, I said, you haven't read it properly, so, you know, go back and read it. You know? There's no discrimination there. It's just, you know, a mental problem and also physical, you know, a sexual problem, but it's also a visual mental problem that women have, you know, about coitus and how they live that between coitus and their own discovery of their own sexuality. And Carla Lonzi was talking about that all the time. And I knew nothing about any of this stuff. And I particularly didn't know what I looked like. I did not know. There was nowhere to be seen. I mean, maybe in some medical book, but that's not what I looked at. I didn't look at biology books. I wasn't studying medicine, but so I had no idea. I had no idea what we looked like. I mean, I wouldn't have even thought about the problem if I hadn't met Carla Lonzi. Still hard to talk about these things. Imagine how it was in the 70s to talk about this stuff. Vaginal women, clitoral women, you know, really. Still hard. Yeah. So, I don't know. Does that answer the question at all?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
And I apologize in advance because it might be a personal question. I don't know. So as far as I understood, you kind of struggle with your career over the years, like sometimes, like in a way, if I understood. So do you think that maybe now your work and also like the Rivolta Femminile work and in a way also like other collectives kind of paved the way for like young female artists now? And do you think now it's easier to be like an emerging female artist? And would you like to be an emerging artist right now? Like, how would you feel if you were like an emerging artist now?
I don't know. I have some things to say. I don't know if I understand the question totally. I think things have changed, and I think there are a lot of women artists that have come up with a feminist premise, let's say, in the last whatever years after me. I have a problem with the word career also. All right, career, I went and looked it up because as I said, I'm not particularly in contact with verbal language, but I looked it up and it says, well, yeah, career means stability, monetary stability, which I've never had in my life. I had to go to work, find a job, which I did, which was a very pleasant job because I was a therapist, child therapist, which was really nice because I could do my work even, so I was really lucky. So yeah, a career is kind of also a status symbol, you know, it has a, it's, you know, it's a status thing. And then you go in on pension usually. Most career, the word career means you stop at a certain point. I would probably never stop until I drop dead or I become, you know, my brain doesn't work anymore. I mean, it's a totally different thing. I don't call it a career. Clotilde Chad used to say it was a privilege to be an artist. It's not easy though, because people don't understand. They don't.
But I think in a way what she's saying is that reading and working with Carla Lonzi's texts allowed you to like navigate situations that maybe even much later were difficult for you and to be maybe more, I don't know, empowered, for lack of a better word. Did it help you to live in a different way to?
Absolutely. I said that about
Yeah.
tabula rasa, which is nothing new. I mean, or separatism is nothing new. All revolutionary groups in the history of humanity separated themselves from a thing they didn't like or whatever was going on, or they isolated themselves in a group, in a separatist group. This is nothing new, and tabula rasa is nothing new. It's just that it hadn't been said for a long time. Yeah, it's very important for a woman, any woman does anything she does. Why is she doing this thing? You have to ask yourself why you're doing this thing and how you're doing it. I mean, are you following the old guys from the tradition, or do you want to go out on your own? It's you know, it's kind of dangerous, but it's more fun, you know. I mean, I was surrounded in art school, in the School of Visual Arts, by Joseph Cassuth, who was a student, by the way, but he was already at Castelli, you know, Leo Castelli was already doing, and the minimalists, and I couldn't imagine myself following in that kind of thing because it was so rational, it was so dry, and it didn't have anything to do with women. Of course, Claire Fontaine was able to work on that idea of using kind of a conceptual thing and turn it upside down. But that was not what I thought of myself as being able to do. I didn't know what to do. I mean, when I met Carla Lonzi and Rivolta Femminile, I found out what I could do. So it just set the rest of my life.
Right. I think we have another question there.
Hi, do you think that the response to your work would have been different if you did it in the United States as opposed to in Italy?
Well, there was no Carla Lonzi in the United States, so I wouldn't have been doing that in the United States. I probably would have never done, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. I know that if I am what I am today, I would never have done, I mean, if I wasn't 22 years old when I did that, and it was now, I would never do it because I really got in a lot of trouble with it. I would not today. I'd be more careful, even though this work is not, the work I'm doing now is not careful at all. It's become very aggressive, this Medea thing and poison and the right to life and death that women no longer have. You know.
I think we can take one more question and then we are going for a well-deserved drink after. Yeah, if there are any more questions. There is just one person online, but I think it's a very brief answer. They are asking you if you, well, they're saying thank you. And then they're asking you if you're still working with polyester resin. No. I think the answer is absolutely not. It's very dangerous. Don't do it at home.
Ava Miss died, well, they think she died because of that. She was working so much with that. It's a very dangerous material. But today they have I've tried to use these new things that this can put on. You don't have to mix chemicals and all that. But they don't work so well. So I don't think I'll be doing any more Black Mirrors.
Okay, well, I hope you can join me in thanking Suzanne for this very special evening. Thank you. Thank you.